Okay.
All right. It is Monday. If Monday, it is not Monday. I will remember that at some point. It is Friday, May 5th. This is the Communications Committee meeting, uh, calling to order at 9:09 a.m. Our first order of business is approval of our April 2023 meeting minutes. I don't know if anybody has questions on the minutes.
I don't.
Okay.
Nor
Next.
do I.
Okay. Does I have the motions in board book? Does anybody else have them?
The motion language, I never have that. No, I don't have that.
Okay, that's fine. I will then read the motion. Move that the Communications Committee approve the April 2023 meeting minutes. Can I get a
Can
second?
you do that as chairman?
I just did.
Oh, okay. Go.
And June's shaking her head yes, so we're good.
Okay, cool. I second.
All right. All right, so we're good in that area. Next is our update on the website and social media discussion. I'm thinking that's you, Dan.
I think so. So I wanted to follow up on a couple of things with the website. So the directory, the staff directory is half fixed. So one of the issues that I've heard from multiple people, I know David, you mentioned it, and I've had other parents reach out to me on the job titles weren't there and the departments weren't there. The job titles have been fixed, so those are showing up. The departments we have to work on. I basically have to re-import the departments into a different field on an Excel spreadsheet, but at least now for the public, it is much easier to search for staff members because the locations and the job titles are functioning properly. We're kind of going down the list of all the minor issues, glitches here and there that we have over the website, and we're getting those fixed up. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we are on top of it and that to please continue providing feedback on the website to me. And, we're always striving to make the website better. So before I continue, does anybody have any questions or anything they wanted to follow up on with the website?
Nope.
One quick question on my follow-up. So I was flipping through it in preparation of our meeting.
Yeah.
3 days early, Sharon. And I noticed on the iPad, you still get, as you're scrolling through, that the image turns black. Is that fixable, or that's just the way it's going to be?
That's the thing that they still are saying they're working on it. And again, the biggest issue is that the hook from Instagram themselves, or is that the website's module for Instagram? So the way a lot of social media platforms work is they'll give you an embed code to embed their site. So specifically, I'm thinking like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So the thing that I'm not aware of, because it's a architectural piece of the website that I do not have access to, and they're not telling me, is that hook for Instagram something that they built, or it's something that Instagram provides them? If it's something that Instagram is providing them, I don't think it's going to be something that we can fix. But if it's something that they build, they're going to try to fix it. And the Instagram hook is a relatively new feature of the website. Like it came out right when we were going live. So again, though, even though it's a new feature, I didn't know if it's just because their older versions of the website couldn't handle it, or if they did build it. So I'm still looking into that one. I know that that's right now like number one on my list is the mobile version of the Instagram. Everything gets dark, and we just want the comments to show up underneath the pictures instead. So we are working on that.
Yeah, because it looks really good on a computer.
Yeah.
And when you hover your mouse over one of the pictures, it gives you a little bit about the picture. It's just, I think as we talked about, the vast majority of people today are using mobile devices. So you're almost building websites for mobile devices, and desktop computers are the secondary at this point.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, we are working on that mobile optimization piece. But from feedback from anybody else who's happened to visit the website on their phone or on an iPad, have you noticed anything else? Is scrolling okay? Has anybody? My biggest beef with a lot of websites on iPhones. And this is just weird on my part, but I know, you know, I like to bring up, I don't like when people have to swipe left or right on a web page from your phone. Is everything drawing properly? Like, I tend to spot check the website on my phone, but has anybody seen anything outside of the Instagram page where when you're looking at our website on your phone, where it gets a little wonky or squirrely because the site is supposed to automatically optimize based on the screen you're looking at the website on? So if you notice anything on mobile, could you please let me know, or if anybody has any feedback on that, you know,
Sure.
let me.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I haven't seen anything so far. I'm the iPad user.
Good.
And
Okay.
phone user as well, but primarily iPad.
Okay. So the other thing I wanted to bring up is I just wanted to make everyone aware. So in our effort to constantly improve our communications with families, where it was budgeted, and I wanted to bring it up, next year, we're going to be implementing almost like a digital locker in PowerSchool. It's an add-on in PowerSchool. It's a document repository. And the reason for that is it's to make the delivery of sensitive information to parents easier and more cost effective. So I'll give you an example, right? Students grades 3 through 9, 3 times a year, take an assessment called the NWEA, right? And they take the NWEA in English or ELA and in math. And the one of the most powerful features of NWEA is its reporting. And they have this family profile report that we then mail home to all parents 3 times a year, usually within 3 weeks of the window closing for taking the assessment for that time of the year. But when you have over 1,000 kids that you have to print out that family report and stuff them into envelopes and address them and use stamps, it's very time consuming and it's really not efficient. However, there's no baked in way into PowerSchool into like just put it online and then just sending a mass notification to parents saying, hey, check your parent portal. So we're investing in a product that we could use in a situation like this, where we could put a lot of our documents in a secure online repository. And I'm stressing the word secure because there is a way to do it now, but it's not secure enough in my eyes. So that's why this way we're going with the more secure digital locker, so we can notify parents. Because, you know, for a while, school districts would like hand a paper to the student, and the student would then shove it in their backpack. And then as a parent, you get it like a week and a half later, and it was crumpled up and there was like juice spilled on it. And that's why we decided to mail them home. But that's very time inefficient and not cost effective, because you have to pay for all that labor and for stamps. So this is our digital delivery, but we're kind of going to be taking baby steps for that. But I just wanted to let you and the public know that in our effort to be, to improve and have effective communication with families, we're going to be digitizing a lot of these documents so we can provide more and more. And that way you'll have a running repository for all of your students, all of your children.
I think that's a great idea. The one question I have is, in order for it to be a secure locker beyond what we already have in PowerSchool, does that mean that there's going to have to be a separate username and password, et cetera, for that?
Nope. It's all going to be built into the parent portal. There's just going to be a new feature when you log into the parent portal. There's like going to be a new hyperlink built in automatically. And then the notifications, because I know, like, I'm not comfortable, some school districts, and I won't name them, they'll email those attachments as like secured PDFs that are like password protected. I don't like that. I just am not comfortable with that. That's this way, the email notification you'll get is, hey, your child's results are in, please log on to the parent portal for more information. And then it'll be nice because now you can, as a parent, you can see a list, a historical, the 3 that they'll get this next year, the 3 they've gotten in previous years. So more than just what we do right now with the report cards.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and we're going to constantly build on that. So, if there's any feedback or anybody has, anything that you can think of additionally, I'm using in the NWEA reports because that's the first thing that comes to mind. But, we're going to be able to use this for a lot more.
Dan, I have a question. So if we're going to be storing more information, sorry, I'm going to back up. Are we storing more information and more securely, or are we storing the existing information more securely?
Well, right now we're not using existing. We're not putting the existing documents that I'm speaking of online. So it's new information is going to be getting stored more securely.
So will there be a requirement then? I know right now to access PowerSchool, you just need your username and your password.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to enforce like two-factor authentication, being that there's going to be more? I keep this question up for you, right?
Yeah, no. And that's actually that's a big thing right now. That's a huge thing in school districts, and that's specifically our cyber insurance policies and more. So every school district has to, I don't know if it's legally, but school districts have to have cyber insurance policies in place in the event of a, knock on wood, hack. And over the last 2 years, the cyber insurance companies have been really increasing the requirements that a school district needs to have in order to qualify for cyber insurance. One of the big ticket items right now is two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. So for those who don't know what that is, we all have it. It's, if you log into your bank, most of the time, if you're logging into like your banking software or financial or any other secure website, they'll text you a code.
Mm-hmm.
Have to enter that code to log in. So that's the second factor in a two-factor authentication. So we are looking at having two-factor authentication, not for parents yet. Most likely, we're going to be. It's already implemented for certain staff, and I don't want to go into details publicly as to why certain staff have it. But David, what I'm thinking right now to make things easier, because I don't know if we want to fully enforce 2FA for parents. I'm working with PowerSchool to provide that as an option for parents to sign up for. And then I was going to send out like an email blast basically saying, hey, we highly recommend, in an effort to protect your children's information and their student data, we'd highly recommend that you sign up for two-factor authentication. Here are the steps that you can follow in order to do that. But for these types of documents, what I'm thinking we do right now is the second form of authentication is that password protection on the document itself. So we would tell people, beforehand what it would be, right? So what the password would be, and we wouldn't tell them what the actual password is. It's going to be something like, I don't want to say publicly, right? But it's whatever it is. It's the date of, I would say it would never be this, but the password is the last, the 4-year of birth or something like that. You know what I mean? So that would be the second layer that we would put in instead of enforcing, two-factor or multi-factor authentication for all parents.
Just out of curiosity, you're talking about doing that just for signing into PowerSchool, or are you talking about doing that only to see these specific documents?
It would be only to see the specific documents, not to PowerSchool itself. But I wouldn't be surprised if over the next few years, more and more school districts enforce that also on the parent level, that they're going to start enforcing two-factor authentication. And there are times where, as a district, we will have no choice, because if the cyber insurance companies mandate it, we have to comply.
Okay. Because look, two-factor authentication when it comes to my banking, fantastic.
Yeah.
When it comes to PowerSchool, in my opinion, it's an extra hurdle that I think will deter the interaction. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But I don't want to deter people from using PowerSchool. If we have to do it because of insurance, we have to do it. But I think, a lot of people are going to say, my password protection is not enough, is not sufficient. That makes me feel a little insecure right now about this. So, I mean, have we had any incidents that you can, not specifics, obviously, that you can share, but have we had any incidents where people have had their Power School account hacked?
We have not in this district, but there have been other districts across the country that have had issues with school accounts being compromised. So, from a parent perspective, the parent accounts only have access to those students. We want to protect all students, student data as much as we possibly can.
Sure.
But from a least impact, parent accounts have the least impact in terms of a security breach. So we have to protect staff accounts. We have to be much more cognizant of staff accounts because of the level of access to student information that staff accounts have.
Sure.
But that's why I was, as of right now, looking at going down the road of you can sign on to the parent portal without issue. There's no two-factor authentication to look at attendance, to look at assignment information. But if you wanted to see these documents, the documents themselves would have a password on it. And that would be the second level of authentication. So like if you wanted to look at your child's NWEA scores, we would send you an email and we would tell you, we would send you a message in the beginning of the year saying this is what we're doing and that all documents would be password protected. We wouldn't tell you the password, but we'd give you an idea as to what the password would be. Like I said, the password for the documents will be the year of birth for your child. We're never going to use that. I'm just saying that publicly. We would never use the year of birth, but you get what I'm saying?
But I guess my question is, how safe is it going to be if it's shared, if the same password is shared amongst all parents of that year for...
Right. So that it's not going to be. So I'm saying the year of birth as a example.
Right.
It's going to be a password that's unique to that child.
Okay. So, but the thing is, that password is going to be assigned or the parent is going to create it? Because, I mean, you know how it is. We have so many different passwords floating around here. Thank goodness, there's facial recognition technology that can assign a password with the username, etc. I guess what I'm saying is, are we creating an additional level? If it's going to be something that's shared with the entire, are we assigning that? Yeah. Are we assigning a password and then they have to change it? How does this go about? Because I want to, is it really truly necessary? I guess is what I'm saying too.
Right. So I would like to protect student information as much as possible, to be honest with you, especially when it comes to stuff like this. So, okay, I'll give you another example, and I'm hoping that it'll make a little bit more sense. A lot of companies nowadays, you get your pay stub emailed to you as a PDF, but the PDF is password protected, and the password is the last 4 digits of your social security number. So would be like what the password would be. It wouldn't be the social security number of the student, but let's say it would be something else, like a student number or something like that. Do you know what I'm saying? So it would be unique to that child, but it would be the same category of where that password would come from. Like we all have the last 4 digits of our social security number, but they're all different. Right. And it's something that we know offhand. You know what I'm saying? So,
okay. Yeah, no, I understand. So it is something that will be assigned. It will be assigned to the student, and then it's up to the parent to get that information. Because I'm just thinking it's logistically.
Yeah.
There's going to be a rather large percentage of parents who are going to go, what's that password again? And how can I get it? And we're going to have to make sure that we have support in place so that we don't increase the frustration from parents who are like, what the hell? I just want to look at my kid's document that you guys are storing so safely. Thank you very much that I can't even get into it. So we just have to make sure that whatever we do is got to be, there's got to be an automated response for when the parent is sitting here at 11 o'clock at night going, look, I've got something to look at last thing before I go to bed. And then now they're pulling their hair out like, I can't get in. So that's all.
That's a great point. And I don't know. I'm leaning towards no. I don't think that the product has the capability for somebody to select what the PDF password protected, what the PDF password protection would be, but I can look into that. If it's something that as a parent they can have the option of changing the password, I would enable that, or it could be something that we assign to them. So I can look into flexibility for families.
Okay, that's my 2 cents. That's
Yeah,
all.
no, you bring up a valid point, and I didn't even think about that. So thank you. That's a very valid point.
Yeah,
Let me
you
ask
have to look at it from us non-tech people. Even though I guess I'm tech, I don't know.
Let me ask a following question to Sharon's. I completely agree about that point about parent frustration. Like, I think the most likely by far bad outcome is not that kids' accounts get hacked or that really sensitive information gets leaked out there. I think by far the most likely outcome is that parents get frustrated and don't know how to log on and lose their passwords. And I think we probably can't overestimate how many parents would probably do that. So anyway, I agree with you, Sharon. I have a simpler question, I suppose, just the nuts and bolts of things, which is my priority would probably be, is this a good product? And then after the product, like, is it, what does it cost? So it's not my first question about it, but I know that in a year from now, we'll have to vote on like budget and things like that, or 2 years or whatever it might be timeline wise. What's the cost for this new software tool that you're currently vetting, Dan?
So the tool is an add-on to PowerSchool. So it's not a third party. It stays with PowerSchool, and it's a product that I had been vetting for at least in September. I have been looking at feedback from districts around the state and around the country as to what they're using for a document repository for students. And so this is by far the most highly recommended feature module for PowerSchool for it. And then the product itself is, I don't have the exact dollar amount, but it's a few $1,000s. So it's not, it's not $15,000 a year. It ends up being pretty cost effective, to be honest with you.
I see. And it's per user, or it's you're saying for the entire district, it's a few $1,000s?
It's for the entire district. It's a district. It would be a district-wide license.
Okay. Chad, based upon the amount of money that we're spending, we would end up spending having the man hours and postage to mail it. It sounds like it would probably be a cost saver.
Sure. Yeah, I get that, and that makes sense to me. A part of me always thinks the question also though is like, is the thing that we're doing actually solving a real problem or not? So yes, it's maybe antiquated to send it out that way, but if this triggers an entire waterfall of like, okay, but then how do we protect privacy? And then two-factor authentication, you begin to think like, well, why not just send letters? So that's where the question came from.
Yeah. I'm with you on that, but the one thing I have to say is the least secure way of sending this information is through the postal system. There's nothing stopping anyone, aside from laws, of course, from opening up these letters. So that's by far the least secure. But I'm wondering if we need to jump to, double, triple secret secure, or if we can just put it on PowerSchool in an area where we can put documents because it's already password protected. I guess maybe I'll throw that out there.
I'm not concerned about the privacy of like NWE test scores, but I recognize that many people are. So I'm not trying to put my own opinion out there about being all that relevant on this.
No, and I understand what you're saying, Chad, because that's the careful balance. Because if I had found a nice product, and if the product was $20,000 a year, I would not ever have felt comfortable to implement something like this because it's too expensive. I'm also trying to be cognizant of, it's not just the cost, but it's the sheer amount of time that it takes the main offices to stuff these envelopes. And it's always like, we don't want to send out the results of the NWEA like 6 weeks later, because then at that point, the status of their child and how they're doing in ELA or math, they're far beyond when they actually took. So there's like there's a time crunch where it's like, okay, everybody, today is, Cinco de Mayo. So those letters have to be sent out by the 12th at the absolute latest. So then there ends up being like a mad dash of like an assembly line of like envelope stuffing at every single school as they're trying to get these out, because we can't put them in the kids' backpack. Like I don't know about you, but like, one, I'm not going to say which kid out loud, but one of my kids is just not organized. And when a teacher sometimes puts stuff in their backpack, and then I'll go through the backpack and I'll be like, hey, what's this crumpled up piece of paper? And then I open it up. It's like, they were requesting a box of tissues like 6 months ago. You could have given,
Sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And that makes sense to me too. Like if a parent was concerned about an NWE test, which, you know, some probably are, some probably are not, but if they were, I can imagine that then if they get the thing 6 weeks later, they're, you know, now the year's partly over. So that makes good sense.
yeah. Yeah. So,
Okay.
but that's a balance that we're looking at, you know, is, you know, I don't like the products to be too expensive to solve an issue, right? So a couple $1,000s is definitely, in my opinion, worth it.
Yeah.
Do we have a way right now to upload documents onto PowerSchool without there being an existing locker?
It's incredibly complicated.
Okay.
And you have to modify the documents almost, and to modify the documents to get them to properly go into the parent portal and to make sure that there's, mapped to the right student would actually take more time than the envelopes. And that's what was the catalyst for all this. Because I'll be honest, I was like, how is this not baked in to PowerSchool?
Yeah.
They said, well, it is, and here's how you do it. And like reading the instructions, I got a headache because it was insane. So that's why we had to buy this add-on to it.
Have we already purchased the add-on, or are we?
It was part of the budget, so the purchase will be for July 1st.
Perfect.
So I don't want you to think that this was like an unbudgeted purchase. This is something that I had put in prior, you know, when we were budget building the end of last year.
All right, and it does, so that part's done, and it does require then the two-factor authentication in order to access the locker, correct?
Well, it's an option.
Okay.
So
Okay.
turn
Good.
it on or turn it off.
Great. That I think is key, because I think, Chad, you and I are probably in the same boat. I'm not really crazy about, like, as a parent, I know that these tests mean a lot to the school system, but as a parent, I look at it and I go, hey, he had a good day, or hey, he had a really bad day. It's, you know, so I'm not as sensitive to it as a lot of folks. So I personally would not go for the two-factor authentication. However, some people are, and for them, you know, what it's right for them, then that's great that option would be there. Okay.
All right, so just quick summary of this. So it sounds like what you're looking at, Dan, is can two-factor authentication be enabled on a per account basis so that a parent can make that determination on their own?
Yep.
And then separately, can you look into, I totally understand the cyber insurance piece when it comes to the school district.
Yeah.
Do we have any exposure that if we are putting these documents up in PowerSchool and we're not protecting them or not adequately protecting them, and someone's account gets hacked because someone chose, you know, not to change a password, or they made their password, you know, password, do we have liability? So I think that might also be, if we're putting more information out there that is, in my world, you know, it's PII, right? Personally identifiable information.
Yep.
So if we're putting more PII out there as a district, do we open ourselves up to some level of responsibility if account gets hacked that could be mitigated by us saying the account was hacked? Yes, but we've taken all reasonable steps to include two-factor. So does that sound like, you know, as far as definitely on a per account basis, we're going to look into a parent can opt into two-factor authentication and then just verify that by putting the information out there and not requiring two-factor authentication, we don't open ourselves up to liability.
Well, and I can actually speak to that right now. So let's see, 7 years ago, Connecticut passed an act. It's called an Act Regarding Student Privacy, PA 16-189, and that specific, and I know, we all had to become lawyers on this one. It basically, all the states over the last decade have started putting together student privacy acts because so many third-party companies house student data. PowerSchool is one of them, right? We don't have a physical PowerSchool server on campus, on-prem anymore. Everything's in the cloud. They house student data. So our state, which I'm appreciative of, created this act that basically puts the onus of protection and liability on the vendor housing the information. However, we have to enter into a contractual agreement yearly with all of these companies beyond the normal acceptable use agreement or the EULA that we have with them, where they have to agree that they will comply with PA 16189 or 16.189, which is a list of all these different things. But the onus of responsibility, David, always falls on the vendor and not the district. If there was a breach, even if it was a breach due to a human factor, and if data was stolen, that would still fall on PowerSchool for liability.
Okay. And just real briefly, while we're talking about PowerSchool, sometime this year there was, as I recall, a special education, a bunch of, I think, special education parents put together a meeting, and I think several of us on the Board of Ed were there. And one of the things that came up, which was really heartbreaking to me, was a mother spoke about her child who is special needs, has access to PowerSchool, and every day is checking their grades, and it's causing this it really put a undue pressure on the child. Like if the child hadn't handed in a piece of homework and the score was low. Do you remember, were you at that meeting, Sharon?
I was, and she was she said the child basically became disheartened. She was
Right.
really upset, and it was upsetting, but I don't necessarily know if that's a technology question or if that's a question for more of the teacher and inputting information.
Yeah. The thing that came up, which I'd like to just be able to close the loop on, is in PowerSchool, is there the ability, I think the answer is no, can a parent turn off a feature? Whether it's, okay, so if a parent...
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
That's a valid point, and maybe that's something I can bring up to PowerSchool. You know, they have these feature requests. They have like a little on their support section where you could request certain things. That's a very valid point. That's something that you're actually starting to see more and more, is the kids psych themselves out because they become a little bit obsessive with going into their portal and looking at their grades and all of that stuff. But unfortunately, from the back end of PowerSchool, it's an all or nothing tick. So we have to turn it on for everybody or off for everybody, or like an entire school. That's the most granular we can get, is a school, but not anything deeper than that.
Can you put that feature request in? Because I totally understand, or could understand. Unfortunately, I'm not in that parent's shoes, but I can put myself in those shoes and understand if you have a child who's just really obsessive. You know, she made reference to the child checking the phone, I think multiple times a day or throughout even the school day. So distracting, and it sort of circles back to the larger problem of, you know, it's instant everything. I need to know now, and then you have that visceral reaction of, oh, you know. So so if you could just let us know if you put the request in, and if it's something that they've said, you're number 101, and we're really after 100 people or 100, right? If you can get back to us and let us know if that's something that potentially in the future a parent can toggle off. Yeah,
absolutely. I will, as soon as this meeting ends, I'll hop on PowerSchool support site and I'll put the request in.
Good, that'd be awesome.
That's it for me.
Do we have anything else going on right now? I don't think so on the agenda.
No. Anything else, Sharon or Chad, you want to talk about communication-wise?
I have a broader question, but I don't even know if we need to. This may not be the right meeting to do so. So maybe it's more like the full DOE. So I don't know. I mean, I can ask it quickly, but then maybe we just move on. I don't know if it doesn't fit quite. I guess since the title of our group is a communications committee, that's why I'm mentioning it. It's really just a question partly started by the meetings about, you know, school violence and concern about that sort of thing. The question is kind of the flow of how we communicate to parents, essentially like writing emails and being in touch and things like that. And I'm just wondering if we may want to consider, and I don't know if it's protocol necessarily or sort of like a procedure, because I don't necessarily have a clear sense of, as an example, we got a lot of emails about that particular issue. And very often it's very, you know, I feel a sense of real responsibility to catalog those responses, write back, those sorts of things. But it's not clear to me necessarily what the sort of steps in that process are. So I don't know if this is the right committee to kind of flag that or not. Maybe it's a bigger Board of Ed issue or question.
It's definitely something that can be brought up at the main board meeting, and probably is a good thing to bring up at the board meeting. But the protocol, the way that that we've always done with the Board of Ed is if somebody sends emails, as we had most recently with the Nashville school shooting, and Mr. Miller over at Hurlbut, it's up to the individual board member, because of course we're all elected members, as to whether or not you respond. But if you respond, and if you respond, you have to be very clear that you are not responding on behalf of the board.
Mm-hmm.
You are responding simply as a parent or as a board member, but not speaking on behalf of the board. Only Steve can speak on behalf of the board. So when we first started getting some of those emails in, I responded to a couple of them, the first two, I think, or maybe three, saying, you know, I can't speak on behalf of the board, but yes, you know, security is always, as a mother in town, security is a concern, blah, 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 kind of an email like that. Mm-hmm. But then when it started getting, it became apparent that it was an organized effort, and there were a lot of people coming in. I halted that, and I said, let's just let Steve speak on behalf of the board. So that's the way that it's meant to be. We can poke Steve and say, Steve, I think, you know, we really need to hop on this because maybe too much time has gone or whatever. But only Steve can speak on behalf of the board. We can't. So you have to be careful what you say, and not portray it in any way, shape, or form as being an opinion of the board when it's simply an opinion of, you know, one person kind of thing.
Okay. So let's skip it for now. I'll bring it up in a different context.
Yeah, it's just a good idea, I think, to bring it up in the general board, because I want people to understand that we are not being heartless by not being responsive. We are actually following protocol. And so, yeah, I think that's why I think it is a good idea to bring it up in the regular board meeting.
Okay. Yeah, Chad, I would say two things. I think is definitely worth bringing up at a regular board meeting, which is that what we've done historically and what's policy. I think there's a disconnect. I'm going to speak historically because I don't know the policy, but historically we have, as a board of 7, deferred to one member, which is the chair, mm-hmm. to write back on behalf of the board. And I don't know if that is policy or if that is history. I think it's a very worthwhile question for us to ask at a DOE meeting. And I think also it comes down to just time management. If we have a real crisis, and the chair is the de facto spokesperson for the board, and the chair is tied up with the crisis, who else on the Board of Ed can be that voice so that we have communication going out while potentially the chair is dealing with the operational piece of it. So maybe that could be part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, I believe that goes to the co-chair. But yeah, let's make sure that this information is made publicly known so that people understand the communication protocol that the board has to adhere to.
And I even say that should be almost reminded on like a yearly basis.
Yeah.
The public to understand that you guys are not being heartless, but you are following protocol, whatever that protocol ends up being. And that could even be something that, you know, flag in my mind. Maybe I can, once everything is kind of fleshed out, Chad, maybe I could put something on the Board of Ed section of our website a little bit more prominently, because that's the one piece I've always felt bad of, like, the public doesn't necessarily fully understand roles and responsibilities and how you can respond.
Wait, Dan, I think I have either a great idea or a totally infeasible idea. But I think also, David, this is just in the category of like good customer service. Couldn't we have an autoresponder
I knew it.
on all of our emails that say essentially like, we've received your email. We want to assure you that we take every email, like, you know, every email does in fact get read.
Yeah.
And please expect a response within this kind of a timeline. Just to clarify, so you understand how protocol works, if you email an individual board member, they're not speaking for the entire board. And like just sort of lay out for the you and I guess administration and BOE together could figure out what that language might be. But an autoresponder might really help parents feel as though they're not just kind of shouting into a vacuum.
Can I jump in for a second? So, Chad, I don't think that will work, and Dan can explain why.
Yeah, great.
But you absolutely, as a Board of Ed member, have every right to respond to emails.
Yes.
And I do it as well.
Yeah.
And you can say, as basic as, I received your email.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to be, I'm going to be one of them. I'm going to be talking with the Board of Ed about it. So as far as like individual emails, I think this is what Sharon was saying she does as well. I will respond. If a parent sends an email directly to me that warrants a response from me and appears to be time sensitive, I will write them back and I will, acknowledge their email, let them know that, I will make sure that this is something that I bring up at an upcoming Board of Ed meeting. So I think probably the best thing to do is when you see an email that warrants a response and appears to, timely and not addressed to us, the board as a group, and even when it's addressed to the board as the group, you absolutely, as each one of us is supposed to be one voice. We all have one. Each of our voices are supposed to be equally weighted, right? There's 7 Board of Ed members. Nobody has a voice louder than the next, but there are procedures, and we have to just vet out or verify that the general procedure of the board is that the chairperson writes on behalf of the board.
Yep.
But you absolutely have.
Yeah. You have every right to respond without a doubt. You just have to be careful what you say, because you don't in any way, shape, or form want to undermine the chair's response.
Understood.
And you have to be careful you have to be careful to let them know you are not speaking on behalf of the board. Those letters that came in, they weren't individually addressed. There were only a couple that were individually addressed at the very end. Most of them were addressed to the board as a whole, but still as a board member, and again, until it became clear that it was a concerted letter writing campaign, I was responding to the first couple of parents, in what I considered to be a compassionate way that let them know that they were heard. We don't get these letters that often. There have been people in town who have clearly written to the board on a regular basis for a variety of complaints and things like that. And, as a board member, you read it, it goes in there. Sometimes you don't necessarily want to respond, just it doesn't warrant a response. But when a parent is saying something, emotional, like, we fear for our child's safety, that as a board member, I think, deserves a response. But again, just be super careful, because you don't want to say, yeah, we're all together and we've decided X. But that's not the case.
No. I'm clear on that. I don't ever do that, of course. So,
yeah.
All right, Dan, you can either we don't even have to, if the signature idea is not possible, we can skip it. I just thought it just came to me as a brainstorm, but we can.
Chad, actually, but you bring up a good point. Like, I do want to say, there is the ability to do that. If the board or anybody wanted to say, you could put that in as like an email signature. There is an option to do a vacation, like an autoresponder, to reply to. Ultimately, however the board wants to handle it, I just do want to put it out there. There is, like, technology could do that.
Yeah.
Like I said, whether it's in an autoresponder, like how people, when they are on vacation, right, you get that auto response. You just make it clear that this is an automated response, or it can get put in the signature of all of your reply messages.
Yeah.
That is a possibility from a technology perspective. I'm not talking about from a procedural, whatever the board decides.
The out of office response, though, is a little tricky, because, then you're setting it up. Like, we get so many emails for a variety of other things, right? We get CABE and we get all those other things, and that's going to be pinging that email out for everything that comes into us.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, so good points. I'll think about how to bring this up to the larger group. Thank you all for indulging the conversation.
No, it's a good point. A really good point.
And June, you may know this procedurally. So just or anyone here might know, if Chad, so I think this is a conversation that's really worth having at a regular Board of Ed meeting. Does Chad send an email to Steve and Melissa and ask that this be added as an agenda discussion? Or I know one way to do it is, the concept of committee is we discuss things And if as a committee, we agree this is something worth having conversation with the bigger board, we can recommend it, in which case I think there might be, more traction, right? If the three of us agree that this is worth a conversation. But if we want to get this added to the agenda, is it as simple as Chad can email Melissa and Steve and say, we want to add this I would like to add this as an agenda item? Or can we just, as a committee now, say, we want to raise this as an agenda item at the, next Board of Ed meeting?
I'm not really positive about that. There is no harm in communicating with the the chair or and the co-chair about things that you want to bring to the full board meeting. Since this was not an agenda item in this committee meeting, I would be hesitant to forward it like directly from the committee to the Board of Ed.
Yeah, that's a good call out, June. Good point. Because I'm just throwing it out here as a discussion, much less than like with 5 minutes to go, let's say like this needs to go on there. David, it's a totally valid point though. I actually am sort of confused about exactly how that movement works. So I appreciate you calling it out, but given that this wasn't even officially on the agenda, why don't I start with, of those two options, why don't I just, flag this for Melissa and Steve, and we'll do that as a next sort of step to.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, Chad, was
as it warrants a discussion, then that's the next action step I'll take, and then
I would
back
say,
what I learned.
Yeah, send an email definitely to chat. Send an email to Steve and Melissa and let her know this came up as a non-agenda item, just under like new business or just communication in general. And again, is there a procedure that because it's worth I think ultimately what we've come to the conclusion of is informally the three of us agree this is worth a regular board meeting discussion item. So do we have to agenda it for our next communication committee, formally recommend it? Who knows, right? But if we can bypass and move it faster, So yes, Chad, are you good with sending?
Yeah. I'll check with Melissa and Steve.
Okay.
Got it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. All right.
All right. So that said, if there is no other new business, this is an easy one for you, Sharon. Want to make a motion to adjourn?
I so move to adjourn today's meeting.
All right.
All right.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, you too.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys. Bye-bye.